Marvel's Ultimate Alliance 3 dropped this past weekend, and I'm honestly surprised by how much fun I had and hopefully will continue to have with this game. It's fairly basic in design and by no means does anything that truly sets this game apart from others in its genre, but that didn't stop me from finding enjoyment out of this game. It's exclusive for the Nintendo Switch and was reviewed on docked mode with the Pro Controller. Here's my review of Marvel Ultimate Alliance 3. The best way to describe Ultimate Alliance 3 to someone who hasn't played it before is that it's essentially Marvel meets Diablo if you stripped away all the loot mechanics. The elevator pitch is that you and up to 3 friends, either locally or online, can play as different Marvel heroes or villains. Who you play as and why is completely up to your playstyle and how you want to play the game. The thing that stood out to me from almost the get-go is just how packed this title is with heroes. You'll rapidly unlock different heroes as you progress through the game's 12 to 15 hour campaign, and when it's all said and done, your roster stands with a mighty 36 different characters. Unlike Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, everyone isn't exactly here, but damn it sure feels like it. To top it off, the game will be receiving free updates going forward, with the first one scheduled for the end of August. These updates so far are confirmed to be adding new costumes, which right now are severely lacking at the moment, and new characters. Now, with all this out there, you'd assume Marvel Ultimate Alliance 3 just wants you to play as anyone, right? And experiment? Well, not exactly. The way Team Ninja has developed the game's progression path is that you only level them up through investing time with them and having them in your party. Haven't touched Iron Man or Captain America but want to try them out at any point past chapter 3 of the campaign, and you'll have a rather cumbersome time getting them up to snuff. The game does provide you with XP cubes as a way to help reduce grinding, but in my experience those cubes are best spent on your core team instead. Alongside this tedious XP structure is a huge team performance tree. You know, it's essentially a skill tree with just buffs for your team's overall stats. As I said, this thing is massive, and after my first playthrough of this game, I felt like I touched maybe a sixth of it. This, alongside other mechanics like crystal slots, which essentially acts as perks, leads to a rather expansive set of tools to truly deck out your team how you want. The minute-to-minute gameplay here is thankfully very solid. It's really easy to pick up and play, but also offers a bit more depth in terms of synergies for those that want it. The basic combat structure is heavily designed towards depleting an enemy's resistance in order to stun them, which leaves them vulnerable for attack. With this in mind, some characters that have really good stagger abilities, like Captain Marvel, can be quite OP if upgraded and buffed effectively. I mentioned how this game can be played by up to 4 friends, and while I did test that out and had some fun playing with another player, I actually had the most fun with this game solo. This is also the way I beat the game's story. For those solo players that are concerned, Marvel Ultimate Alliance 3 offers just as much solo as it does co-op. Playing alone allows you to control all 4 of your characters at once, whenever you want, and allows you to play strategically. For instance, it allows you to stagger a boss with one character and punish it with another simultaneously. Each character's 6 or so moves now become 24, and you almost always have a character on hand with energy left. Sadly, playing solo puts you alongside some brain-dead AI. It gets the job done for sure, but man have there been times where they would pick up objects in the game only to chuck them against the wall. Or hell, I would stun a boss and they would continue to fight the minions while I'd hit the boss's health myself. Don't get me wrong though, solo is still very fun to play, but nothing will likely top 4 friends together with mics and good synergy. Now, what surprised me the most alongside the huge roster of characters was the campaign. The campaign takes you across multiple familiar locations across Marvel properties and meeting dozens of familiar faces along the way. You start off with the Guardians of the Galaxy, but quickly a massive slew of characters when you make it to Earth. Playing the story mode quickly unlocks characters at a good pace and was an overall solid experience. I could think of maybe 2 to 3 dud chapters, but besides that, the game's plenty of cutscenes and bosses led me satisfied and wanting to play more. Seriously, the amount of bosses in Ultimate Alliance 3 can't be praised enough from me. Each chapter generally has 3 to 5 bosses, and by the time I'm finished with my first playthrough, I probably faced over 20. A lot of these aren't even slapped in either, with like neat introduction cutscenes to every single one in multiple phases. For example, facing Electro was quite simple, but when Venom and Electro combined for the second phase, it led to some neat puzzle solving in terms of taking them down. Of course, at this type of game, it's expected that you will level up your characters and replay these missions on harder difficulties with friends. The story here is very much the Infinity Saga tale. Thanos has come in to collect all the stones, and it's up to the Alliance to gather these stones before he does. Along the way, you will pick up new recruits and foes as you try to stop the Black Order from ending the universe. I don't need to say this given the type of game it is, but the story isn't groundbreaking. It's very light, as the comics often are. I was satisfied with the story and felt like its length didn't overstay its welcome or end suddenly. They hit the gray point that a lot of games don't generally hit. Many of you know I'm a pacing sort of guy, and I never felt bored during this game's story. Also, there's a surprising amount of cutscenes for a game like this. They're spread quite effectively around most chapters and create a good sense of pace of progression through these chapters. In addition to the fairly substantial campaign I just mentioned are Infinity Trials. You accumulate these by finding specific rifts during the game's a dozen or so chapters. Infinity Trials act as extra challenges on the side that task the player with special goals like beat a boss rush or defend a zone as Captain America, and well, you get the point. Inside these challenges lie the last few remaining characters you're going to need to unlock, and some cosmetics for specific heroes. 9 out of the 10 times though, it's generally just a reskin. These trials are generally really fun to blast through and offer up a good reward system, but how they are designed hindered my enjoyment with them immensely. Half of these trials are specific character trials like Captain America, Hulk, Wolverine, etc. So a level 20 Hulk solo trial would require you to have a somewhat close enough level Hulk to meet that challenge. This is good for players that would happen to have one in their party, but goes back to the main structure complaint of this game and how it works. Half of these trials I just don't care to do since I don't have those characters at a high enough level. Yeah, I get it wants me to experiment with these characters, but their own systems in place hinder me from doing so what do I do? Besides grind. Besides the main gripe, these trials overall are very solid and complement the game's campaign very effectively. Infinity Trials and New Game Plus on harder difficulties are going to make up most of this game's endgame.
That's the endgame.
Lastly, I want to touch on this game's performance. As I mentioned in the beginning of this review, Marvel Ultimate Alliance 3 is a Switch exclusive, which would make you expect some sort of quality given this game's nature. Something akin to maybe like a Bayonetta or hell a Mario Rabbids, which both ran really smooth on the Switch. Ultimate Alliance 3 is set to 30 frames, and it can't hold it quite consistently. Thankfully, while frame dips are here and there, it never really got into my way of playing docked. Different characters and their abilities will affect the game's performance according to how intense their abilities are, and almost always when more than one ultimate is used at a time, the game gets very choppy. Luckily, you're not going to really need to play when you're doing an ultimate move, and as I said, it didn't affect my experience much. It would have been nice to get a higher frame rate given how we've seen more impressive ports do more with less, but it's not a deal breaker in the slightest. I tested the game in handheld mode too for a couple Infinity Trials and just did not see the same kind of experience as I did in docked. It was really close, but the game overall just has a lower resolution and it's a bit blurry in parts even with the small screen. Maybe it's just because I played this game probably for like 15 hours in docked and then went to handheld, but yeah, if you play your Switch mainly handheld, you're gonna notice this stuff. It just isn't as fun as it is playing on a big TV, which these games really flourish when you have a bigger screen to use. Your experience, of course, will vary depending on how much portability really means to you and how much you're used to a compromise on the Switch. Just, yeah, the quality feels in the middle of a last-gen port and a Nintendo exclusive in terms of performance. If you can play rather intensive games like Bayonetta undocked, then you will be completely fine here. I never played the original 2 Ultimate Alliance games last generation, but from what I've been able to gather, Ultimate Alliance 3 functions exactly how a sequel would have back in the day, just here in 2019 with cel-shaded graphics. It's loyal to what the previous 2 games established, but it isn't some sort of reimagining of the series at all. It isn't a system seller by any means, but if you own a Nintendo Switch and would enjoy the style of game, then you'll find a lot of hours of fun to be had. Surprisingly, Marvel Ultimate Alliance 3 is one of my favorite exclusives on the Nintendo Switch. I didn't expect to be playing it as much as I am now, and I just hope that with the game's inevitable DLC offerings in the future, that my time spent with the game are far from over. Yeah, this concludes my thoughts on Marvel Ultimate Alliance 3 on the Nintendo Switch. If you enjoyed this review, make sure to show your support with a like, and also by subscribing to the channel. If you own the game, I would love for you to comment down below your experience with it as well, and yeah, start a discussion down in the comments down below. As always, I've been Online. Have a good rest of your day, and take care everyone.